And that, kids, is why you don't go swimming with your armor on. Greetings and welcome once again to Roman of the Empire. I am your host, Roman. Today we are talking about The Mandalorian, Season 3, Episode 2, The Mines of Mandalore. I like this episode overall. It was way better than the largely useless intro we got with Episode 1 last week. The only thing that came out of that episode that was of value at all, really, was the very end where Din went to go see Bo-Katan and she told him where the mines of Mandalore were located. That was pretty much it. There was a pointless episode aside from that, 1 minute bit. And at the time, you didn't even know how useful that was. But the look of this episode was really good. I thought you get a lot more into Mandalorian myth and legend, visiting the planets, and the look of Mandalore is very cool. After the Empire, fusion bombed the hell out of it, it basically crystallized the surface of the planet, and it looks really good. And you're on Din's quest to bathe in the mines of Mandalore. They actually move that forward, which is good. There are there's some repetition problems with this episode. They do a lot of walking in the same places. There's a lot of useless exposition from both Din and from Bo-Katan talking about Mandalore. And they're repeating things that you already know or saying things that are obvious. So scripting-wise, there was some unnecessary stuff in there. But overall, like I said, it was certainly a more fun episode. You got to see some cool creatures, which was neat. Grogu actually did some stuff and wasn't just floating around like a little green blob. That was great. So these are all good aspects of the episode. And the conclusion of the episode was good, and it actually does move the plot forward. So these are all good things about this episode. So this one was worth it. You can skip episode 1 altogether if you didn't watch it and just hop into this one. Hopefully, moving forward, this is the pace of the series. So there you go. Now we're going to go into the episode real quick and just zip through what happens. So spoilers, but this is where I get to talk about a little bit more in depth about the things that I liked and didn't like. We start off with something I really didn't like very much. Din has to get a part for an IG-11 robot that he wants to take with him on his quest to Mandalore. So he stops by Tatooine and he sees, what the hell is the lady's name? The droid fixing lady, Peli Motto. She's a mechanic. She's the one who got him his current ship. She's a fairly annoying character. I don't really prefer her character. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so they stop on there. She's trying to rip off some pod racers. It's fun. She can't get the part for him. She gives him, and there's a little throwback, but you don't really care so much because the droid itself wasn't very impressive. R5-D4 from A New Hope. You've seen him before. He needs him to be able to test the atmosphere on Mandalore. And I thought that this part, again, this is also a problem for me. It's like, your ship can't detect atmospheric conditions. Your armor doesn't have some stuff in it that can do this. So the quest for the droid was a fairly useless one, in my opinion. There are other things that I think could have done this. So they grab the droid, fine, and they're on their way to the planet. Din points out some of the systems that are on the way, and this was kind of cool. He's telling him about the moon that he grew up on, Corcodia. You can see that as they're approaching Mandalore, and the planet Calvala, where Bo-Katan, where they just came from. And he's showing him on a map, and he's telling him you have to learn how to map things if you're going to be, Mandalorian. This is how we don't get lost. They hop down onto the planet. the droid hops out. And the planet looks really good. This is one of those things I was talking about. The crystallization of the planet. It's cool looking. When they land, it's this, green, glassy kind of surface. Sends the droid out to do the atmospheric test. The droid disappears almost immediately. Shocking. And then they run into these creatures called Almalites. Almalites? Almatites. Alamites. Look, it's the first time I've seen the damn things. I thought they were Morlocks, some kind of mutated form of a Mandalorian, but they're not. They're a native species that normally lives in the wastelands. So they jump the droid, and then Mando, of course, goes in search of, fights off some of the critters. Drags the little green fellow with him, which, on surface level doesn't seem like a great idea since the little green fellow, he's got the force thing going on, but he still seems, very, very much like an infant, a toddler. Now they sink down, and this is good. Again, the look of this is good. You see the ruins of the city of Sandari, and this was, if you watched the Clone Wars, you're familiar with this place. You knew what it was, and now it's just ruins. It looks like ancient ruins. They're not that old. I mean, this has only been, maybe not even 30 years or so that this has come to pass. But it looks ancient, and it's a cool look. And Din just steps off the cliff to drop down, and his jetpack kicks in, and it's, again, cool. It's cool. So as soon as you get down there's some lizard creatures creeping around, and Din gets to a point where he finds a helmet. And he's looking at the helmet, and what looks like a big robot trapdoor spider comes out and envelops him, and drags him off. Well, goodness. I'm sorry. No, he doesn't get the little green guy. Forgive me. The green guy comes in a minute because he doesn't know where Din is. That's why Does he take him? You know what? It almost doesn't matter. He does. I confuse myself. So Din gets captured by the spider robot thing, and it's got him in a cage. And this is a really cool looking robot thing. Again, they did some nice work with this episode. And the robot thing, you don't know what it's going to do with him. Is it going to eat him? There's a little fellow who pops out of it who looks a lot like General Grievous, but isn't General Grievous. And the look of this creature is cool, but similar to General Grievous. So you do get that throwback. It's not an entirely original look, but it's not, I don't know. It is still interesting, even though it's familiar. How's that? So he's got him in like a cage. It almost looks like he's going to cook him. He takes the Darksaber and throws it, takes his weapon and throws it, and he's off tinkering around with stuff. Grogu tries to rescue him. Grogu makes a noise. And then Din wakes up and he's like, go get Bo-Katan. Because, Bo-Katan's not actually that far away. They're in the same system. This is still a little bit of a problem for me. Whatever Bugman was going to do to him, he probably could have done in the amount of time this takes. So little green guy hops in the fighter with the robot to navigate for him to go get Bo-Katan. And this seems like a lot of activity for the little green guy, honestly. He pulls it off, but it's, given what his character is capable of, it does seem very unrealistic. He lands on the planet. Bo-Katan sees the ship coming in, and she's kind of irritated because she thinks it's Din come back, and she's like, God, I already got rid of this dude. Why? So she sees it's just Grogu. She's like, oh, shit. And then the rescue ensues. She goes back to Mandalore. And this is where a lot of the repetition stuff comes in. She fights the Alamites, which is a terrible name because I can't pronounce it properly, which is where you get, she knows what they are. She's like, yeah, they're just these critters on the outskirts of the city. And then her and the little green guy drop down just like Din and the little green guy did earlier. And she fights some more of the critters down in the cave. And then this is all pretty seamless for her. And this is where you get a lot of the useless exposition from her. It wasn't always like this. It used to be green and beautiful. I was the princess here, blah, blah, blah. These are things you already know or don't need to be explained. Of course it wasn't always like that. We know that. That's useless. She fights Robot Bugman. And then she handles the Darksaber very easily, where Din does not. That's also something that should be noted. When he was fighting the critters earlier, he was very clumsy with it because he feels the weight of it, whereas she's very natural with the weapon. It kind of is what it is. He shouldn't even have it. It's supposed to be hers, but, series of events happen in season 2. Now, what she kills Bugman, and that's a really fun scene to watch, the killing of Bugman, and then gets Din back on course. They proceed to the mines of Mandalore, and where you get more exposition about who she was, and Din actually connects with her story, though. She's telling the story of when she basically did her ceremony of becoming a Mandalorian, and how her father was proud and how he died for Mandalore. And Din takes that to heart, and this is the way. And I think she maybe gets a little bit of vibe off of him about how significant these events actually were, as opposed to her view of them, which was her past. So she views them through a different lens than he does. We get down there, and there's a plaque that talks about the Mythosaurus, which is a terrible name, by the way, that was tamed by, like the first Mandalorian king. This is what united their people. That's important. So Din strips off his jetpack, his weapons, and goes into the water, and he's saying the oath again. And I don't know if maybe Boca should have warned him there's a drop-off point, or if the drop-off point is new based on the planetary shift. But he takes about 3 steps in, and he sinks like a rock. Just boom, gone, down into the abyss. He sinks far. Boca jumps in after him. She keeps her jetpack on because she's apparently smarter. All the way down to the bottom, grabs him, and on their way up, she sees a mythosaur. This is something that's supposed to be extinct. They're not supposed to exist anymore. This being a big, massive creature. And this is the skull that has become the symbol of the Mandalorians. That's why they adopted it. This was their unifying thing. And then they plop back up onto the landing area there where everybody dropped off from. And that's the end. But it's actually more of a beginning now. And I do like this, that he's now cleansed. I don't know how he's supposed to prove that to his people, but he knows it. Boca knows it. I guess that's how he has his proof. And the symbol of the mythosaur might be a symbol of Boca and Mando moving forward to reforge the Mandalorian people. Now, their planet is in ruins. I don't know how you're going to fix that. To call it habitable would be very generous, but I guess we'll see what happens. But there were some very good aspects of this episode. You get into that Mandalorian mythos, and you see where we can move forward now. We finally put all this other baggage behind us that was, holding everything down. And if Boca and Mando are going to be traveling together, that's going to be a lot more fun, I think, than him and just a little green guy. So I hope that's what happens in this moving forward. I guess we'll see. So useless exposition, a lot of walking, and repetition. Those are the bad parts of the episode. Good parts, the look of the episode, and the story finally moving forward. So this is all good stuff. So that's going to be it for now. Check this one out if you haven't. This has been Roman of the Empire signing off. Please like and subscribe because it really does help the channel. Drop some comments. Let me know what you thought about the episode. Be kind.